no-sparge brewing. That's going to be the focus of this BeerSmith tutorial video. All right, so no-sparge brewing, real quick, is kind of the in-between of batch sparge and brew in a bag. So basically what you're doing is a full volume mash in your mash tun and then running off and boiling from there and doing the rest. So there's no sparge step, which can reduce your brew day by 30 to 45 minutes. I use it for almost every 5-gallon batch that I do these days that's not brew in a bag. So now in BeerSmith, there are 2 ways you can go about setting up a no-sparge equipment and mash profile. So I'm going to start with the one where a person maybe never does brew in a bag. Maybe you are set up for mostly 10-gallon batches using a 70-quart cooler, and every once in a while you want to do a 5-gallon one-off or something like that. And so for people who do that, what you're going to want to do is go and make a new equipment profile. And what I do is I copy and paste my standard batch sparge profile. If you look, I've got that at 75% brew house efficiency. No sparge is actually going to get you 2 to 3% less efficiency because there's no sparge step. So just lower that, change the name, and now you got your no sparge equipment profile. It's that easy. This is actually wrong. I get about 77%. And so if you go in, I've got my no sparge one down here. You'll see this is 75%. And that's it. Keep everything else the same if you do batch sparge. The next step is setting up your mash profile. Now, when in BeerSmith, brew in a bag, there's an assumption of at least minimal squeezing of the bag when it's removed from the mash. And because of that, Brad has the grain absorption set lower for brew in a bag than it is for other sparged methods. So what you want to do is go into your preferences. On a PC, I believe it's called options. Select advanced. And then where it says BIAB grain absorption, you're going to change that to 0.96. What that's going to do is allow you to use a BIAB mash profile and give you the same grain absorption numbers as a standard sparged batch of beer. So make sure you change that to 0.96. Again, this is for people who never brew in a bag. Okay. So now what you're going to do is go into your mash profile. And I'm not sure if, some people already have the brew in a bag default mash profiles. You can just open one of those and tweak it however you need to. So what you're going to do is open up a profile. Make sure that batch sparge using batches that fill 90% or whatever is unchecked. And then that'll allow you to come down here and select brew in a bag mash with full boil. So select that. And like in the last couple of videos, what I like to do is make a few copies of these different mash profiles and then just change the step temperature, the sack rest temperature. If you double click, you can go in there and change the temp for each one. In here, you have to make sure that the type is set to infusion for that first mash step. For the mash out, if you're going to do a mash out, make sure you change it to temperature. That's just for reference. So once you get that all set, you can go in, open up a recipe. You got your brew in a bag set up here. So make sure you select your, we're going to do no sparge. Go to mash. And now what you can do is use, you can call them no sparge or whatever, but you can use the no sparge mash profiles, which are set up for BIAB with less grain absorption or more grain absorption. And you'll get a full volume recommendation, 8.91 gallons of water. So this will actually match if you were to set up a batch sparge and just add your sparge volume to your mash volume. That's going to be the same exact amount. And that's how you set up no sparge for people who aren't going to do brew in a bag. Okay, the next step is for people who do occasionally brew in a bag, but who also like to no sparge. This is where I'm at. So what I do, I go ahead and close this. I've already got my brew in a bag mash profiles, but since I actually use those for brew in a bag, I don't want the absorption rate to be changed. So I'm going to go back in here and put it back at 0.586. And I'm not going to, so I'm going to use my standard equipment, my no sparge equipment profile. That's the same thing here. And then I'm going to go, and I'm actually going to use my standard batch sparge mash profiles and add the sparge volume and my mash volume together. And you'll see, so I've already got that all set up. So if I go to a recipe here, we'll go back to the same recipe. I think it was 8.91 was the total volume. So I'm going to go in and just set my standard 5-gallon ale, go into mash. Let's just do this. And you'll see 4.34 plus 4.57. If I double click this and I add 4.57, that's going to get me to 8 point, what is that? 78 or something like that. And you'll see my sparge volume drops down to 0.01. And we're at 8.91. I mean, if you really want. And so this is how I do no sparge brewing, is I just subtract from my sparge volume and add it to my mash. It ends up being the same exact volume, but this is a way to get around that grain absorption issue. So that's how you set up for no sparge brewing. Pretty simple. Just make sure that you, if you're going to change your equipment profile, that you take a couple efficiency points off. You can always use your standard 5-gallon ale, something like that, and just reduce your efficiency like this. That'll work fine as well. I just find it easier to have my own equipment profile. And that's it. So that's no sparge brewing. I strongly recommend people at least try it out. Supposedly it leads to a maltier beer with less chance of tannins leaching out. So it's kind of a neat, fun, and quick way of making beer. If you have any questions, like always, shoot me an email or private message me in some way, and we'll start a conversation. Cheers.